please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kunsang. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Washington's Information School, and I'm originally from Nepal. I'm here as an international student.
So Kunsang, you got your BA in anthropology from Washington University in St. Louis.
Yep.
And how did that lead you into your current, work in information science?
So in my undergraduate, I majored in anthropology, global health and environment studies, and with a minor in environment analysis. So how that carried into my PhD journey, I would say at the University of Washington's Information School, I do information science. I do more social science research. So in that regard, where I see my undergraduate degree coming into play into my PhD journey is mostly through the qualitative research methods side. So that's something in my PhD I do more study about how people living in remote areas in Newbury, in northwestern Nepal, interact with digital technology. So I do more study about how us humans interact with digital technology, and I feel it is very in line with my undergraduate degree in anthropology.
I know for information science, a big part of it is understanding how communities are formed, particularly through technology. Do you have any, besides your current curriculum and whether that's within your PhD or teaching these classes, do you have any other experiences that ties into your own, thinking on journeys and, community building and how that all works together?
Journey, when I am teaching the class, teaching this particular course on journey making and migration, is that the question?
You could answer it like that.
So I'm thinking about the journeys I made. So I grew up in Newbury Valley. One of the case studies that my class engaged strongly in this particular course. So I think about my journey, right? The particular chapters that they read are reflective of my own experiences. Too, for example, I grew up in Newbury, which is in northwestern Nepal, and then at a very young age, my parents, and at the same time, I would say my own curiosity to learn led me to Kathmandu, the capital city, where in Nepal we call hostels, but here you seem to call boarding schools. So I stayed there for 13 years. What that would also mean to one is that your core goal is education, right? Your parents want you to be educated, because in the mountain areas of Nepal, nowadays it is changing. There are some infrastructures, educational infrastructures that are improving, but when I was a kid, there was government education, but we did not have the right infrastructure as well as teachers. Now so that led to parents. Most of the kids from the Himalayan areas right now are first generation students, and parents mostly engage in subsistence agriculture, and very few in travel and tourism businesses. So let's think it this way. I'm a kid in Kathmandu. My parents, I was raised by a single mom. So my mom in Newbury. So over the 13 years when I'm in school in the city, what this means is that I would be seeing my mom once a year, and so that's the close interaction with parents, right?
Yeah.
So there's this certain aspect of sacrifice when that decision is made, which is also a journey like that I took, that my parents took, right? At the same time, currently what's happening is like most of the students are either studying in boarding schools or working, and mountain areas have a more higher population with elderly members in the community. So the question being like, what are some of the future consequences in terms of culture, lifestyle? I don't know how much you know about the mountain areas of Nepal, but people in I would speak particularly about my community, but which is quite similar across the Himalayan ranges. People follow Tibetan Buddhism, are ethnically Tibetan, follow Tibetan Buddhist ways of life. So in that regard, yes, this comes into play. And in terms of when you were asking about question about community, how engaged I am in terms of community research or in terms of community itself. I would say, well, from if I am to go back to like what I was doing from grade kindergarten to grade 11, 12, which I wouldn't necessarily say I'm super like engaged with my community, because that's like how I'm a growing kid. However, in terms of when I joined undergraduate at the Washington University in St. Louis, I would say I was I stayed engaged with my community. For example, 2019 and 2020 until 2020 we had COVID-19. During that time, I was an undergraduate research fellow, but at the same time I received this Pulitzer Center fellowship. And the question being, in the city areas, even a dog gets noticed. A dog near, I would say, I'm not trying to say dogs are not important, but a dog sitting near the parliament of Nepal, Nepal's parliament outside the gate gets noticed by news coverage, whereas COVID-19 was a critical time. And my concern was like, what's happening in my village, where you have to take a day by bus and then walk for some 3-4 days. So what's happening? Who is taking notice of such these remote areas? It's not just in terms of during that time, but also in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of that includes healthcare, that includes basic facilities such as education, right? So in that regard, during that time, I, as a Pulitzer Center crisis reporting fellow, I wrote a couple of news reportings, and my research and work has always, that is really important to me. One of the first generation students to be doing research in their own community. For that, it's really important. That's an important thing. So that being that, other than that, I've engaged with the community in terms of fundraising or project coordinator when it comes to building community water tap up in Newbury. Or during in 2021, 2019, 2020, 2021, for over a year at least, one of the communities in Newbury went without electricity. Like no electricity for a year. And so during that time, I served as a project coordinator and worked with Cambium Initiative. That's one of the NGOs based in the U.S. But I remotely served as the translator, project coordinator between Cambium Initiative and community up in Newbury to distribute electrical tools, for example, bulbs and wirings to some 230 households. So I would say I try to keep connected to my community. That's the other aspect is when you're far away from home, the more you want to be curious about your culture. You want to know where you're coming from.
Totally.
It also makes the distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah.
It's, I would say that came into play in my life. So.
No, thanks for sharing all that. What I got from that is I sense some frustration with the cultural differences and how news is covered. I guess particularly over here, in terms of just kind of like we put so much a focus on the small things and not on the, I don't know, what I would probably consider more important things.
I wouldn't necessarily say frustration on cultural differences, because my view towards how I view things is that we all have different cultures.
Okay.
And that's what makes us beautiful.
Cool.
And when I talked about the dog, it took place in Nepal, and I'm just trying to point out one thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say like, oh, this is what's happening and this is the big world how we are living. But I'm just trying to point out one example, a drop. So, yeah, but for me, culture is beautiful and identity is beautiful, and we just just respect one another as humans. That's I feel that's very important. That's what one Dalai Lama says too, right? So if you cannot help someone, don't even harm them. So that's important.
And what made you want to pursue a PhD in information science?
Yeah, so information science, again, so after undergraduate, you could either take a job or you could pursue a master's or a PhD. So one of the instances for me was one, I wanted to work at INGOs. I was looking at some job opportunities, but most of the jobs they required at least master's or PhD.
Yeah.
And I found that information science is very interdisciplinary, and it's at the same time quite a new topic for me. And I thought, well, I need master's, I need PhD, or either of them. They're both important. So back to the point, information science is very interdisciplinary. And at the same time, if I'm going to continue education, I would rather, for me, I'm a curious person.
Good.
And I would want to learn what's new, what I'm not familiar with. So information science made sense, and that's how I chose the program, and I really like the interdisciplinary nature of this program. I mean, I would say throughout my undergraduate, my anthropology, global health, that was interdisciplinary. My minor in environment analysis, that was interdisciplinary. And yeah, so is my PhD.
There's another part on your curriculum that I wanted to talk about, which I guess this is something I talk about a lot too, but in different contexts. But the ethics of care within the journey of materiality. Can you expand on what you meant by that in your description?
ethics of care within
Yeah.
journey making.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, what questions are you hoping to come from that, or in your course?
Yeah, when I'm thinking about ethics of care, so in terms of this particular course, since we'll deal a little bit about community engaged research,
Mhm.
as well as your own ethics is part of us,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
So but oftentimes we view things from our own perspective.
Hmm.
And sometimes we may end up thinking what is right to us is right for the other person, and it's not necessarily so. So how do you bring out the aspects of care in your work, and how do you understand a community? Understanding community, or understanding. Right now we're sitting together. I don't know about your journey. If I say something that seems right to me, may not be ethical to you, right?
Mhm.
And the same applies. So we as humans, how do we bring out the aspects of care? And it goes back to my background in anthropology.
Mhm.
One big aspect I learned, or my training, was even if I see this red back in front of me,
Yeah.
it's a red back to some people because they see it as red, but we must try to understand what material it is, where is it coming from, who made this, where is it, was it ethical practice in the designing of this? If I'm using this particular thing, is it even good for me given the kind of material it's made, right?
Sure.
So there is, whether we think it or not, but even when we are asking this question, there is aspects of care that's already coming into play, and so basically,
Mhm.
understand yourself, but
Okay.
also try to understand someone else,
Yeah.
even just a little bit, right? So that aspect of care, try to understand someone's ethics. What is right for you, or what is not right for you? How did you make this journey, and what kind of what ethical decisions did you take place, or how did your parents make that decision for you, that for you to make this particular journey that you're on?
Totally.
And it's abstract in nature. In some way, I feel we all live in abstract in certain ways, whether we know it or not, feel it or not.
Yes.
But it's the journey we take. So that's how I envision. I don't necessarily come with fixed structures, but because I would imagine some of my students might want to listen to lots of podcasts about migrations and journey and build a project out of that. They may be able to analyze what kind of ethics of care is taken into consideration in this particular. Some of my students might want to do read academic papers about migrations and journey. Some of them might want to do a movie, so they can analyze it in the way that they wish to. At least that's what I'm imagining. So
you think, my question now, after hearing all that, is like, would you agree that an individual helps create, a welcoming space? Like, it's up to, someone who wants to more or less take charge in order to create what they want to create in any given space. For example, kind of like, since the start of this podcast, I feel like we've gotten a bit more comfortable since you've started talking more about your personal life. And I'm kind of been listening to that. I was like, okay, it seems like you're more comfortable talking about your personal life, which I'm happy about. That's something that I'm always cautious to talk about on air, because I notice some people get really quiet and don't want to talk about themselves so much. But you do, which is great, because I'm the same way. So something I've been saying is, lately, I've been working here for like 4 years, right? Is I can't make everybody happy, and not everyone is going to like me.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed as I keep on going through my life and changing in my own ways, is less and less people are going to like me. But what I've come to value about that, kind of honestly, lack of, how can I say this, social hierarchy is how I'm going to say it, is when the good stuff comes, I tend to appreciate it a lot more. And what I've come to appreciate this year, as I was talking to your colleague Sarah the other day, is the individual relationships I have with students around here. Because I know, what I want, what I like, and I've had a pretty bad year last year, which, I don't know, personally I think those kind of bad experiences tends to help people. I feel like I've really, sure, my social circle is a lot smaller, and the amount of people that, want to engage with me is smaller now, but the people who are actually in my life, they really want to be in my life, and they value having me in my life in some way. And in that regard, I think, it's up to ourselves as individuals to create the space that we want to create, instead of, having the collective kind of determine that for you. I
feel your experience, in my I will go back to my experiences, because I feel your experience is also quite similar to mine, in regard to the circle being the community getting smaller. And when I think about this, I think about distance, where the particular individuals that I have known a couple years ago are. For example, some are in Nepal, some are this. So there's this distance that creates the disconnect. At the same time, the sort of environment that you might currently be in and I might currently be in, and that our values might have changed over time. For me, in Tibetan we say mitakpa. Mitakpa, what it means is impermanence. Everything changes, that nothing remains as it is or forever, right? That helps me thinking that our values might have changed. The distance might have created, a smaller circle. At the same time, there are various phases in our life where at times we just want to, nurture ourselves, be it reading a book or crocheting or simply going on a walk by ourselves. And I feel that's totally fine. If that's during that phase of your life, if that's what's helping you, then one should do that without necessarily feeling the feeling of missing out, right?
If I could talk about myself a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
I'm kind of a selfish person sometimes.
It depends on what kind of selfish you're thinking about.
I think my personal values comes from, I have grown up in a world and have different experiences, from my own boyhood to my contemporary medical transitioning and how that kind of affects my social life, to where, I'm going to be honest, I'm very pessimistic. And I think my model for life comes from the phrase, I want to change the world even if I lose all my friends. And that's because...
That's not pessimistic.
That's not pessimistic?
I mean, people come and go in life.
Okay, that's what I think, yeah.
Because I'm sure you've created, when your last connections went away, I'm sure you created, you've made new people, you've created other communities that aligns with your values.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. Well, it's like, I tend to find that people like to make it easy for themselves in terms of how you're supposed to go through life, right? Like, if you follow this path, you somehow end up in some utopian, existence where everyone is happy all the time. But that's just not realistic.
Yeah. Again, everything changes.
Everything changes.
Yeah. when I'm happy today, I also think like, yes, this is going to change too. So it's not pessimistic per se, but I am acknowledging the fact that that things are evolving.
Yes.
That's how I look at things, and I would say I am on the I'm more on the, what is the opposite of
Optimistic. Okay.
Yeah, and that too, I've trained my mind to be optimistic.
Okay.
As I was growing up.
It's interesting you're calling my viewpoint optimistic.
I mean, I called it optimistic because you had a goal, and
yes.
yeah, you know, you strongly want to do something, and that's where I saw was positive, because when I look, I mean, I don't know a lot about you. I just met you a couple of times, but just with that word, I would say, I mean, maybe I'm being superficial, but your goal seems to be bigger than your circle. At least that's how I saw it.
Thank you. I needed to hear that. You have no idea.
Although you used the word "I'm selfish" a couple of times, I don't necessarily see that as being selfish, because selfish has this, you know, when we look at someone, like, they don't think about any other people.
Yeah.
And they're just doing this for their own purpose. But you have a bigger purpose that may benefit other people, that has bigger goal and bigger purpose. So yours, I wouldn't necessarily say, if you are going to spend, let's imagine you randomly needed 10 monitors just for yourself, and you're using some, let's say, $25,000 to purchase this out of your parents' money, because you needed this, right? Now that's selfish, because that money could have been used for various purposes, right? That's a different, that's, for me, I would consider that as selfish. But in your, I see you care about something, you know, you have a bigger picture, and that's why you do certain things. And if the world cannot see you where you're trying to go, then that's fine, because some of us are ignorant. Not every one of us are want to openly engage with certain things. Well, we all have certain fears, certain ignorance, again, I would say, because a lot of times it's out of our ignorance, it is out of our where in the world that we have been living so far, that the kind of environment that we grew up in, the kind of words that we hear, that's what shapes us into the person in some way, I would say. Because when you see me talk, it's how I've been shaped. I've shaped myself, at the same time how the community or the society I live in has shaped me over time, right? For me, it's not we are black and white. No, it's never like that for me. It's like you mentioned, you have some days good, some days are really bad. And I have the same experience, and you're the sum of the circles, and all of us experience the same thing, right? So I see care in what you are doing. It's not necessarily, it's not selfish. Because sometimes we have to change the dialogue in our own mind too, and sometimes it's the other perspective that also plays a role.
And just to kind of, I guess, comment on that really quickly, I honestly think it's kind of important for me as my own person to call myself a bad person sometimes.
Sorry?
I think it's important for me, for myself, to call myself a bad person sometimes. And I think personally that comes from my own, spirituality with Catholicism. And very complicated history. Obviously, didn't have a great time, or not obviously, but I didn't have a great time growing up in Catholic school. A lot of ugly stuff there. But recently, having actually read a lot of prose from the saints, I'm like, oh, Catholicism is for really for people who just want to feel pain and see what they could gather from that pain.
I think that has to do with religion,
Okay, great. No, continue.
Yeah, so sometimes what happens is that, whatever, at least that's how I view again,
Okay.
right? Whatever we take as the soul, just, let's say, consume too much.
Yes.
Too much consumption of the same thing can sometimes be detrimental to our health,
Yes.
both physically as well as mentally.
Yeah.
And sometimes, let's think about spirituality. How do you feel when I ask you, like, how does spirituality feel versus how does religion feel? Maybe you may have different perspective. For me, if I'm to say, like, how I feel about spirituality, like, it's very open-ended. It's like,
Okay.
it doesn't have to be a religion itself. Even if you put burn an incense and surround your house with flower plants, let's say,
Yeah.
that's your own spirituality, because it helps you grow in a certain way. It gives you peace of mind. Maybe you go on a walk and you just watch the bird. Maybe that is a spirituality for you. At the same time, I know religion, again, this is my own perspective.
Yes.
I've observed, it's not to say that religion is bad, because sometimes the fundamentals of religion as well as spirituality, while spirituality is abstract right now, but religion is meant to help the individual, because we as humans, we want to rely on something. Whether we feel it or not, we want to rely on our friend, right? When you're dressing up, like, want to rely on something. We want to for decision, we want to rely on something. And the same goes with us as humans. We feel that there's a higher being. We rely on something. Now, what happened, again, this is my perspective with religion, is that over time, it's not the religion itself, but humans brought their own ego into the practices.
Yeah.
And because of which some religion can convince us that we as human has no agency. We as humans aren't intelligent, or you as humans have committed a lot of bad deeds, and because of which we are a lesser being. And that also is shaped by the religion, because you practiced it so much that your view to certain things have been blurred or narrow lens, like, or you just follow one lens, while there are a lot of other lenses in this world that you can see, and that sometimes can be caused. I mean, this is like, let's go back to ignorance, right? When you're just seeing things from just a single lens, then we become ignorant.
I have a lot of opinions on everything you said, but we've been going for almost an hour here.
Oh boy!
Yeah. No. I mean, I'm happy. I feel like that's going to be a lot of things I'm going to think about. I needed to hear some of that. I just want you to know that. I feel like I needed to think about these things. It was very relevant to my week.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are some things I reflect on.
Yeah. No, and I like how you reflect on them. I usually, and I don't want to take this to the detriment of my previous guests, but I think a lot of people tend to stick to one point of view, in terms of like how they talk about things, just
Right.
because they want to convince people of their point of view, which I personally I think that there's some a value in that too. As I've been telling people in the office, I've been recently reading a lot of, more conservative thinkers, just because I don't necessarily agree with them. But I think it's good for me to see, like, oh, that's how you think? That's interesting. And, this is going to help me, talk to other people, who may have similar perspectives, and maybe I could actually level with them and meet some sort of middle ground instead of just being angry with them all the time.
Yeah. So this is something we talk in my class too, because let's say, I mean, this is a practice. Like when you mentioned about how people want to make one point and stick to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, or most of the time, I would say, so let's say sometimes, right?
Okay.
We're basically generalizing here.
Yeah.
In academia,
Mm-hmm.
in news writing, in writing a book,
Mm-hmm.
or even movies, right?
Yeah.
The focus will be on one core character,
Mm-hmm.
and that's from a human perspective, because that helps us to really understand and focus on one thing. And maybe that has to do with more with human psychology too, that we can flow through things when it's easy, but it's difficult to flow through things when it's abstract, right?
Yeah.
Now what happens in such case is, I talk to my class about this when we are thinking about a single story.
Uh-huh.
But then maybe I'm deviating, but
That's okay.
When we write a single story,
Mm-hmm.
think also about the other aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who have we excluded in writing a single story? Be it newspaper, like the news we read, articles we read.
Mm-hmm.
It mostly focuses on a single story. What about the other aspect of the story? What will happen if we cover the other aspect of the story too? And the same thing goes with, and this again goes back to cultural anthropology, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're hearing me talk,
Mm-hmm.
you're hearing me talk, but what about the other things that I might have missed in this process? Or when you're talking about certain things, what about the certain things that you brought up that became,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, we formed it, right?
Yes.
We gave some life to it. What about the aspect that we did not cover that is still existing, right?
Yes.
So, and this, I would say, yeah, it's in the training.
Yes.
It's in the training, and yeah, maybe that's how humans tend to understand things. But at the same time, I feel it's really important for me, I always think about what might be going, I can't just make judgment because someone is rude to me. I must think about, like, what might have happened today to this person, right? What's their background? Where are they coming from? Where did they grow up in? Or there might be underlying situations that may be impacting how the person behaves. Or sometimes someone may be really joyous, and that could also tell about what they might have experienced, and like, let's say 10 minutes before they met me, right?
Totally.
So it's all ephemeral in nature.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good way to end this. Ephemeral. Okay, it's all ephemeral in nature. I like the way you said that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Kunsang.
Thank you.